Just quickly before we start the video, a quick thank you to my amazing patrons Rob Slide and Fox. You're both awesome, thank you so much for your support, it means a lot. Now let's get into this masterpiece of a film, shall we? The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is one of the most uncomfortable, suspenseful, and genuinely horrific horror movies ever made, and I will always defend it. If ever there was a horror movie to not rely on the most cliche aspects of horror that everyone and their mum complains about, like jump scares and gore, and utilize creative filmmaking techniques, discomforting music, and gritty cinematography, then it's this. Obviously, being a movie made in the 70s, it's gonna be a bit of a trendsetter when it comes to horror movies and even slashers, to the point where some people argue that Leatherface is the first ever slasher depicted on the silver screen. But this isn't the reason why the film feels so original and more effective than a lot of other horror movies. But before I get into this amazing masterpiece, let me get introductions out of the way. Hi everybody, my name is Misa, and usually this is the part of the video where I would go on about how much I love bad movies, because I do, and then talk about a movie with a stupid name like Subway Shark or something. But I wanted to do something a little bit different today. If you've been watching my channel for a little while, then you've probably noticed that I bring up the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre an absurd amount in videos where I talk about bad horror movies. And this is because I think this movie is the epitome of what makes a good horror film. And honestly, I thought that this was just an opinion that most people who liked horror shared, but I was actually pretty surprised to learn that quite a few people don't actually like this movie for various reasons. I mean, a lot of these opinions and takes I did find on Reddit, so it's not exactly the most reliable source of genuine perspectives on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But the people who didn't enjoy the movie bring up points that I feel could be seen as valid criticisms. But it is Reddit, so they usually don't say it with the kindest tone, they're usually pretty condescending. However, I do think that the fact that the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is such a highly respected film, even by directors like Quentin Tarantino, who literally thinks that the movie is perfect, his words, not mine, kinda shows that at the very least, there are justifiable reasons as to why people like the movie. Now, obviously, I'm not using the general public opinion as a justification for my opinion on the film. I mean, as Superhand said,
people like Coldplay and voted for the Nazis. You can't trust people, Jeremy.
I'm just saying that I think that there's a legitimate reason as to why people love it, that's all. However, a lot of moviegoers seem to think that it's just not worth anyone's time, and I am here to defend why I genuinely believe that 1974's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is one of the greatest horror movies ever made. And I'm going to be doing this by going through different criticisms of the film that I've seen and explaining exactly why I don't agree with them. And maybe slightly agree with some, but don't think that that means that the movie's bad. Now, a couple of warnings before we start. Firstly, this is obviously all my opinion. If you don't like the movie, then that's fine. You're just a bad person and should never have an opinion about anything ever again. That was obviously a joke, relax. Nah, but if you authentically don't like this movie, then that's obviously okay. You're entitled to your opinion. And a long-ass YouTube video by a 28-year-old British girl whose comfort movies are Terrifier 2 and 3 probably isn't gonna change your mind. I'm not necessarily making this video to change anyone's mind. I'm making it honestly because, number one, I've been looking for an excuse to talk about this movie on my channel for months, and number two, I want to defend something that I genuinely think deserves it. And second warning is, I'm gonna be spoiling the movie throughout the video, so I mean, it's a film that's over 50 years old, so if you haven't watched it, then I'm sorry, but I'm not gonna limit my discussions about the contents of the film just to appease you. Like, go watch it, okay? But with all that being said, let's get into why I will defend 1974's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre until my very last breath. So, first, critique. So, one criticism that I've seen from a lot of people is that the movie is too slow, and people even describe it as a slow burn, which is shocking considering the movie's only about an hour and 20 minutes long. I have no idea how something so short could be a drag, unless you're talking about a terrible film like Yeah, that movie does exist. I did a video about it. Go watch it if you're interested. Plug, plug, plug. Now, I've rewatched this movie quite a few times, and I even rewatched it for this video, and not just considering the fact that the first kill happens half an hour into the movie, which isn't all that far in, all things considered, but one word that I would definitely not use to describe this film is slow. It does take its time to build up the tension and the atmosphere, I have to admit, but I believe that this is to the movie's benefit, and it never feels like pointless filler, and it definitely does not feel slow to me. A lot of horror movies that people nowadays claim are some of the best to offer take some time to build up the characters and the tone, and they won't rush into the horror. Because let's be real, if a movie just jumped straight into the killing, or the haunting, or whatever the fuck the movie's about, you wouldn't care about the characters suffering, and the whole thing would probably just be labelled as torture porn or mindless violence. I mean, think about it. Alien, Jaws, Get Out, Substance, Weapons, Hereditary. None of these movies just rush straight into meeting the villain and having them kill the main characters. They allow the audience to get to know the protagonists, or at the very least, the villains, or the environment that the movie is taking place in. And they create this sense of dread and attachment to the protagonists, or, if not attachment, then it allows you to get to know who they are as characters so that you can, at the very least, understand their actions throughout the movie. As these are horror movies, we as audience members are fully aware that shit is gonna hit the fan eventually, but we don't know how, and we don't know when. And that's why the Texas Chainsaw Massacre works so well. From the beginning of the movie, we're shown a perfect example of tension building with the opening. The awful sound of the camera going off, the close-up shots of the corpses, the shot of the manipulated bodies zooming out to show them in a fucked up position. It creates a sense of mystery since the audience don't know why the corpses have been tampered with, and a feeling of anxiety due to the almost agonizing music and the corpse display. The sound design in the scene in particular is really effective at making the audience uncomfortable with how unpleasant the sound is, combined with the vile imagery. Like, the dead bodies here look disgusting! Their decomposing skin and teeth and nails being in such a state of rotten decay. Oh, it's just so nasty. Plus, with the radio playing in the background talking about grave robbings, it gives us a sense of what the villains are doing, but we have no idea why or if they're doing anything else with the corpses other than putting them up as decorations in the cemetery. And if they are, then what? And then we're introduced to Sally and the group, and there are so many signs that the area that they've traveled to is suspicious as fuck, and that things aren't quite right, but we're not explicitly told why or how either. The town is concerned about the grave robbers, but the sheriff is saying that the crimes are being committed by forces outside of the state?
Evidence indicates the robberies have occurred over a period of time. Sheriff Jesus Maldonado refused to give details in the ghoulish case and said only that he did have strong evidence linking the crime to elements outside the state.
Like, I'm sorry, why would someone travel to a completely different state to rob graves? And how could the sheriff possibly have evidence to support this? Especially without having a genuine clue as to who is actually doing these crimes. It's just really suspicious and something feels very off. And then there's the hitchhiker scene, but we'll get there in a little bit. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, I don't agree with this criticism at all. I believe that the movie does a fantastic job of ensuring that the audience member is uncomfy and asking questions while setting up the circumstances that lead the main characters to the Sawyer household. It sets up the kills well, and I don't think taking half an hour to lead the characters to the house is a bad amount of time. In my opinion, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a great example of how to create tension and mystery when establishing a setting and characters. And it does it in a decent amount of time. So, in other words, it's not slow. It takes its time to make us actually feel uneasy about the circumstances that the characters are in, and then bash us in the head with how awful the kills are. Next, critique. Okay, so one thing I can say about the characters is that they shouldn't have just been walking into somebody's house without expecting anything to happen. Like, you're in Texas, dog. You think the owners won't just shoot you? You're lucky they didn't shoot you just for walking on their land, mate. But in all seriousness, I've seen a lot of people say that the main characters in the movie are unlikable, underdeveloped, annoying, and some even saying that they deserved what they got. And as much as I can agree with the sentiment that the characters aren't the most fleshed out, no pun intended, I don't think it matters when it comes to the story being told. Hear me out, I promise this isn't just a cope. As much as I adore main characters in horror movies who go through arcs and have a more grounded personality, as it makes me root for them a hell of a lot more, I would argue that the movie isn't really about Sally's group. I would argue that the movie is about Leatherface and his family, and those characters, I think, are fleshed out. See, a lot of people tend to fixate on Sally's group when making this criticism because we spend the most amount of time with them, making them seem like the typical young teenager or 20-somethings that we usually see in movies like this. You know, the ones that end up being victims to the main antagonist. But when I watch the movie, I see them as vessels for which we can observe the absolute deranged lives of the Sawyer family and the town that they live in. And look, I do recognise that having the point of view characters have more... well, character would be better as an experience overall. However, I also think that the point of the movie are the various crimes that the Sawyer family commits and their family dynamic, which feeds into who they are as people. Leatherface in particular is a very interesting case study of evident abuse, and he would be a massive safeguarding alert for the NHS if he were over here, fucking hell. He's constantly being abused and talked down to by his family due to him being a person with mental disabilities. During a time where care for that group of people, especially in a place like rural Texas, was shit.
Ow! Where are the kids? Where are they, Julie?
It's very clear that despite his massive stature and lack of hesitance when he's killing other people, he's mistreated by the people that are supposed to love and care for him the most. He doesn't speak and only makes noises similar to an animal, which can indicate not only that he doesn't know how to talk properly, but also that this is how he sees himself, as an animal. And this is all due to the mistreatment that he faces and the fact that the family treat him like the tank of the group and nothing else. And despite the awful things that he does, the movie makes it clear that he's a victim himself. He can't communicate, he's mistreated, and you could argue that he's being taken advantage of by his brothers because of his stature and his lack of intelligence. And in reality, through a lot of the scenes, he doesn't act menacing or like he's enjoying what he's doing, he acts like a frightened child. I mean, when the gang enter his house, he's only killing them because, number one, he's been taught to kill and scavenge people for food by his family, and knows that they'll get angry at him for letting them get away. And number two, he's afraid of what the family will think if they find out that he even allowed them to enter the property in the first place. I mean, look at him, he's clearly panicking. You could argue that Leatherface isn't really able to determine that what he's doing is wrong because of his mental capabilities, or lack thereof. And his family's influence having warped his perception of anyone who isn't in the Sawyer family. Isolation and abuse can completely distort your perception of the outside world and make you believe things that would seem preposterous to the average person. Like, oh, I don't know, eating people being okay and normal. I could write an entire essay about these characters, but I won't make you guys suffer through that because otherwise we'd be here all day and this video is already long enough. What I'm getting at is, I understand people maybe not liking the main group of characters, but not at least admitting that the Sawyer family are interesting is a little bit weird to me. I mean, I just spent all that time talking about Leatherface based on small snippets that we observe throughout the movie. There's so much thought-provoking stuff when it comes to the Sawyer family. But the main group, I guess not so much, but I'm always more interested in the Sawyer family when I watch this movie anyway. Which is actually a good segue into the next critique. So, another criticism that I see floating around is that the characters' actions in the movie are unrealistic. The group walking into a house that doesn't belong to them, Sally screaming so much during the dinner scene or when being chased by Leatherface, the group going to the area near the Sawyer's house in the first place, etc, etc. And I have to ask, what do you mean unrealistic? Firstly, Sally screaming. I'm assuming that none of you guys have ever been in a life or death situation anywhere near as fucked as the one that Sally ended up being in. Being chased by a crazy man with a human face mask and a chainsaw, being tied to a chair and being forced to sit and watch while some 100-year-old fossil tries to bash you in the head with a hammer. I mean, just being in a house full of cannibals in general. I mean, if you have, I feel really bad for your therapist. But Sally screaming and having such a loud and visceral reaction to what was happening to her in this movie is reasonable, in my opinion, and I think it is realistic. I mean, I've literally seen people say that Sally screaming while running away from Leatherface is stupid and unrealistic because she would be focusing more on staying quiet in the forest so he doesn't find her, and I'm sorry, but what? She's running for her life after watching her brother get fucking torn apart in front of her by a man wearing a skin mask and holding a chainsaw. I'm sorry, you're telling me that you would automatically go into survival mode and be quiet after seeing that? You're telling me that you wouldn't be so scared that you would be screaming and shitting yourself? Yeah, that's what I thought. Most people, when faced with something like this, wouldn't be thinking, oh god, I better stay quiet. They'd be thinking, oh fuck, I'm gonna die, and Kingdom Hearts 4 isn't even out yet. Hey, that's what I'd be thinking. You can't say whether the way someone acts or doesn't act when being threatened and nearly killed is unrealistic. We would all react differently, and some people would run and scream their fucking heads off. And as for her screaming being annoying, specifically during the dinner scene, I mean, yeah, you can think that, but it's not unrealistic. I think it really adds to the horror of the situation in the scene. I mean, again, she watched her brother die, she was chased around by Leatherface, who was trying to kill her, she was kidnapped, and then tied to a chair and made to sit with cannibal rednecks at a table with bones and human and animal meat and the stench of death everywhere. Come on, I would freak the fuck out in this situation as well. I think it's a realistic response. I've also said so many times before, but this scene is one of the only scenes in a horror movie that has ever made me feel uncomfortable. Like, ever. And Sally screaming throughout the whole thing makes it so much more terrifying because it emphasizes how awful the situation she's in is. Her absolute panic and hysteria are understandable and uncomfortable to watch. I can get people saying that the screaming might be annoying, but not unrealistic, dude, come on. In regards to the group going to the area in the first place not being realistic, I'll give you some context. So Sally and her brother Franklin and their friends go to a gravesite in Texas to make sure that their grandfather's grave hasn't been vandalized. You know, because of the radio. And their friends treat it like a road trip. Now, as much as it seems like something a group of friends wouldn't necessarily do nowadays, back in the 70s? I don't know. I mean, this was a time when going on a road trip was one of the most exciting things that you could do in America. So I can kind of believe it. I mean, as weirded out as I would be if my friends wanted to go and drive to my granddad's gravesite. In a world where you can't just hop on Discord and chat with people, TV was something that you only watched when you were being lazy at home, and usually it was trash. And the only fun things for people in their 20s to do was drink, fuck, go to an outdoor movie theatre, or have a good old protest against the government. I can see this happening. I mean, I'm a 90s kid, so I might be completely off. I've obviously never lived in the 70s. But I just don't see this as something really far outside the realm of possibilities. But maybe I'm in the minority here. And when it comes to the group walking into the house without knowing who lived there, or even if they would hurt them for trespassing, yeah, I can understand why people don't like this aspect of the movie, but one defense that I can give the movie is that this is kind of in the group's character. The group walking in was probably just a consequence of their entitlement to space and general idiocy. It was hinted at during the part of the movie where they walked around Sally's family house and just looked around touching everything. Most people would be respectful and wait in the hallway, but these nosy fucks were all over the place. And plus, they were so carefree when they picked up the hitchhiker, and despite him clearly being a fucking weirdo, they let him stay in the car for way too long. Which shows how dumb they all are. So I think even if you think this is unrealistic, I think what little character that they do have is definitely consistent with them being nosy fucks and being stupid. I just don't think that the character's actions not being realistic is a good criticism overall. You can realistically explain most of the things that the characters do throughout the film, and even the actions that make you scratch your head seem consistent with the character's personalities shown. But maybe that's just me because I'm able to justify the character's actions in my head, because I've watched this movie like 100 times, so I've had a lot more time to think about this stuff than a casual viewer would, but I don't know. Next, critique. Right, so this one is definitely one that I seriously don't understand. I've seen people genuinely claim that the hitchhiker scene is completely pointless and adds nothing to the story, and let me tell you, this is a bad take. So one of the main reasons why people say this is that he marks the van with his blood before they drive off, and it is never explicitly brought up again about why he did this or the fact that he did do it. And firstly, they do mention it.
He's gonna get you, Franklin. He's coming to get you. You don't think it means anything?
We'll protect you if he tries to get you.
Franklin is having a freak out about it because he thinks that the dude is going to come after them. And marking the van kind of lets him know, oh hey, those are those kids that I was terrorizing, let's fucking get them. And secondly, I genuinely don't see how this could render the entire scene pointless, even if it's true, when the scene is supposed to be setting up how fucked not only the Sawyer family is, but the rural area that they live in. The hitchhiker states in the van that he worked for the factory nearby that kills cows for meat and explains what's in the food that Franklin eats. And the way he describes it is fucking vile.
They take the head and they boil it, except for the tongue. And they scrape all the flesh away from the bone.
But it uncovers how normalized these disgusting ingredients and standards for food are, especially in the more rural areas of Texas compared to the city where the group are evidently from, which is an interesting contrast when you think about the fact that the family eats human meat as well as animal meat. They almost see the disgusting ingredients of the animals people eat to be on the same level as the people that they eat, and can use this as one of their many justifications for their cannibalism. Something along the lines of, well, people eat this crap, so what's the difference in what we do? Which is a clever way to display the discussion of animal cruelty compared to the crimes of the Sawyers throughout the film. But me interpreting this way might just be the English literature graduate in me coming out, I don't know. Plus, the fact that mentally he is definitely a little bit, crazy. And his self-mutilation and weird behaviour creates such a sense of anxiety and concern for the area that the group must have found themselves in is also very clever. They've already encountered a drunk dude mumbling to himself in a creepy way, the grave robbings have been happening in the area, and then this dude who's obsessed with blood and death is cutting himself in the van and laughing about it. It's so uncomfortable and it allows you to have concern for the main characters and wonder what the fuck is going to happen to them, which is a setup for what ends up happening next at the Sawyer house. So you could argue that the scene is establishing the tone and expectations for what's going to happen later on in the film without explicitly telling you and just giving you hints, which I love. And when it comes to the marking on the side of the van, to me, and this is just speculation on my part, but it seems to me like the marking is like a brand. I mean, the dude worked for a place that killed cattle, and when cows are being bred, they're branded. I think the same can be said for the marking on the van. It's a brand because to the Sawyer family, these are their next targets for food. So even if it doesn't explicitly come up later in the movie in a way that explains it, I interpret it this way. This might just be me reaching, but I genuinely think that this is what the creators were going for. It's never been confirmed, so I am just making an assumption here, but I do believe this. So yeah, it's not pointless, the scene just needs a bit of interpretation and looking into. Next critique. So this criticism is probably the one that I have the most amount of trouble arguing against, mainly because bad acting is something that, for a lot of people, is a completely subjective thing, especially when it comes to movies that are older like this one is. So what do I mean by this? Well, a lot of people like to say that the only good actor in the movie is the hitchhiker, and in all honesty, I don't actually feel like the actors are that bad. I mean, yeah, I can admit sometimes their delivery is a little bit wooden, but when shit hits the fan, holy fuck! Like, how can you say that they're not acting their asses off here? They all look genuinely terrified. I really think that this is some of the best acting from horror movie victims I've ever seen. I actually watched a documentary on the making of the movie, and this dude hadn't seen Gunnar Hansen, the actor who played Leatherface, in his mask when they recorded this scene. So, this reaction? Yeah, that's genuine. And apparently he was so scared that he ran out of the house. Like, a dude had to grip him to pull him down onto the floor when Leatherface hit him, and apparently he got out of the guy's grasp and just fucking booked it. I'm sorry, but these guys acted really well during the more messy scenes. When it comes to the more relaxed scenes before the characters interact with Leatherface, I admit, they're not the greatest, but maybe this is just my age showing again. But a lot of movies during this time period had acting similar in my opinion, barring some obvious exceptions, before you guys grill me in the comments. I've watched quite a few horror movies from the 60s and the 70s, and maybe it's just the caliber of movies that I've watched, but a lot of them don't really seem to have acting that much better than the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I don't think this movie in particular is anything crazy when it comes to how bad the acting is, honestly, but again, this might be my age and the fact that I watch a lot more bad movies than good. I mean, that's all I do on this channel. Watch absolute shite. But regardless, even if the acting in a lot of the scenes isn't great, it doesn't ruin the experience for me at all. I love the build-up and the payoff, and I think that other factors like the cinematography, the visuals, the sound design, and the atmosphere make up for any lack of acting skills, personally for me. Basically what I'm trying to say is I am hardcore coping. Last critique. Okay, so the ending. The iconic ending. This is the one critique here that I actually completely agree with. I know, complete shocker. The ending is actually quite abrupt. However, I don't think this is a bad thing, and let me explain why. Sally escaping was an act of quick thinking on her part. Jumping out of the window and just booking it like she did wasn't planned. It wasn't something that she took a while to consider, she just went for it and hoped that she survived the jump out the window. And then her trying to flag someone down to help her and managing to jump in the back of the truck after this absolute goat in the massive vehicle stops to help her is all an act of panic and desperation. It's fast-paced and abrupt because an escape like this would be fast-paced and abrupt. Once she's in the van, she's gone. She's out of there. And I think it perfectly represents the chaos and the nature of what's happening in the scene. So I don't think it's a negative for the film. But it just fits in with the vibe of the ending. So yeah, these are my arguments against the criticisms of the movie. The thing is, regardless of whether you agree or disagree with me on this, I do believe that anyone who likes or dislikes the Texas Chainsaw Massacre are completely valid in their own opinion. If you really just cannot stand this movie and you think it's boring or badly acted, then that is your subjective experience watching it. Just like how my love and adoration for this movie is my subjective opinion on it. Personally, for me, I love this movie, regardless of these criticisms, and even the ones that I agree with don't take away how much I enjoy the movie, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. It's genuinely scary, it's unsettling, and it's just a great horror movie to me. To the point where I compare basically every horror movie that I ever watch to this one, and I can't lie, pretty much none of them compare. So yeah, that was a strange video for me to do. I'm not really used to making something so positive with the kind of content that I usually do. But I liked making a video that just let me gush about a movie that I like, as opposed to a movie that makes me want to bang my fucking head against my desk. Don't worry though, I'm still going to be doing bad movie reviews like I always do. This was just a one-off video that I wanted to try out. I do have more videos like this that I want to do, but I'm going to try and do them maybe once every like 4 or 5 videos or so. If you do disagree with my opinions, then that is absolutely fine. You can let me know in the comments. Or if you really want to argue, you can tweet at me. The links to my Twitter, /X and Blue Sky accounts, as well as my Letterboxd, are in the description below. And for the generous people who would like to support me making these videos, my Ko-Fi and my Patreon are also in the description. If you join the Patreon, you'll receive early access to my videos, early access to my artwork, and monthly commissions by yours truly. At the beginning of every month, I will draw something for you in an art style similar to these examples. So if that interests you, then you can become a member. Otherwise, you can also commission me separately. I do take art commissions. And I would super duper appreciate it if you did. But anyway, thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!